Good evening, everybody. And now we're back to politics this week after 2 weeks of non-politics. You're watching the Volpe Bazzo report. Dominic is in Florida sucking Mai Tais like usual. But we have some great guests this week. And we have guest Mike Kaplowitz, Westchester County Legislator from District 4. And we have Brett Freeman, the publisher of Halstead Media, who I write for, and you can find my column every week in the Yorktown News. You won't find it in the Somers Record because Somers likes to be the land of idiots. But I am also in the Mayapack News. But anyway, Brett, you are the publisher of the Halstead Media, but you showed the paper that...
we have 3 papers, Mayapack News,
right.
Somers Record, and Yorktown News.
Right, and Somers, you said, is your most successful venture of the 3 right now.
Yeah, Somers and Mayapack, yes, yeah.
But Yorktown's not even a year old
Yorktown's less than a year old.
Right,
so
it's not even a year old.
We're still building that brand.
But it seems that you promoted the editor, Brian Fugamagalli, who'll be on the next show we tape, what's his position now?
He's an account executive and also editor.
And he's doing well right now because you hired a new reporter for Yorktown, Brian
Marshauser.
And he's very good. I've seen his writing. Yes. Yeah. You're a good judge of talent so far.
I am.
I mean, you're what, 38?
I'm 34.
34? Oh, my God, you're a baby. Jeez. No wonder you keep me around. You need an adult in the room.
I do.
But I'm saying, have you always had this eye for talent?
I would say I'm very, very good at hiring people. And I think that's one of the most important things you have to do as a boss.
What about you, Mike? Do you see yourself as having, because you have your own business, you do what in private, before we deal with politics, privately you do what?
I'm a registered representative, an investment advisor.
Do you have your own business?
Have my own business, almost 30 years, yeah.
Okay, and now you hire people, right?
In various capacities through the years, and at the county level, at the business level.
Have you had an eye for talent, or?
You broaden it. The question of an eye for working with people. I learned a long time ago the platinum rule. We all know the gold rule.
He who's got the gold makes the rules. Yes, I understand.
Golden rule is treat people as you would treat yourself.
Yes.
The platinum rule is actually treat people as they would want to be treated. And in doing that, life is really a matter of sales. That is that you have an idea and you want to work with other people to either convince them to join you in that idea or to be able to meld that idea so that the two of you together can move forward. And that works in government and that works in business.
My grandfather taught me not to be what most people grow up to be what they despise the most. And that's what you have to guard against. So you try not to treat people in a way that you don't like being treated, agreeing with you, but also you don't want to become the kind of boss you didn't like working under. Which is why I've always been self-employed, because I found out that in private corps and in government bureaucracies, they promote the idiots to get them out of the way so that the workers can do their job.
I think a good boss does 2 things. A, they hire people smarter than themselves, and B, they have to learn how to get out of the way.
Well, that's the other thing my grandfather said. First-rate people hire first-rate people. Second-rate people hire third-rate people because they can't stand the competition. A first-rate person doesn't care who gets the credit because he knows in the end, being that he's on top, he gets the credit no matter who else is getting because he...
The best government example of that probably is Abraham Lincoln, and as talked about in Team of Rivals, where he was not afraid to literally take the people that had tried to and still want to try to take his position and put them in his cabinet and work with them. And he was strong enough that he was able to listen to them, incorporate them, and yet at the same time say no to them if he felt that.
Abraham Lincoln would be the first mafia godfather. You keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
Okay.
But I don't think there was a mafia back then.
There was Tammany Hall.
Yeah, well, yes.
In fact, Lincoln fought against a lot of those kind of movements. So
now, for you people watching this show, I want you to know Brett and Mike are going to be here for the show that'll be following in 2 weeks after this one airs. So we're going to get into this Tammany Hall corruption. Mike's got this break. We're taping here on April 3rd. And breaking news was a big corruption scandal. Shocked in New York, goes all the way down to county government and the state and the New York City mayor's race, and all the way up to Albany.
Right.
But we're going to get there, but not this week, because I want to deal with Mike with the county government and Brett, how these are news stories for your paper, because we are airing in Somers besides Yorktown. Mm-hmm. And these issues are, these are stories you're going to cover or have been covering, I would assume. You did a great story on Mike's running, by the way. I called you and told you that. Your story on Mike was very good. It covered all the bases, and it wasn't boring.
Well, I appreciate that.
Not at all. Well, I already got the job, so I'm not sucking up. But let me ask you something, Mike. You broke away from, and this is just, I'm not going to get into the detail yet, but you broke away from your Democrat colleagues to go with the Republicans to vote for the present budget. Is it because you're in the financial field that you don't drink the entire Kool-Aid of your party?
When you make an investment, there are two ways to do it. There's the top down and the bottoms up. The top down says, let me look at the overall environment, make my decisions based on that. The bottoms up says that company has value relative to its price at this moment because it's based on the details of that company. I have been consistent for 16 years, and it was just perhaps recently that some realized it, but I have continually on every issue on a bottoms-up basis made my decisions.
But
to answer your question then, I work this budget as I work every other budget and realized what the limitations were, what we could accomplish, and that some of my colleagues were trying to overreach. They happen to be on the Democratic
I understand,
side.
but the thing is it because you are a private businessman? You don't make your main living sucking off the government teat. No, seriously, because there is a difference. If all you've ever done is sign the back of a paycheck and not the front of a paycheck, you view the world differently.
It's as my daughter indicated to me years ago. Dad, perhaps it's because you have another job to go back to. And what has been freeing, frankly, enabling, is that because county legislator is a part-time job, and it's geographically close, I get in the car and in 20 minutes I'm down in White Plains, it has allowed me to engage in my methodology, in this bottoms-up approach, to do what's right on every issue, and not be as concerned about the top-down, not as concerned about that if you do that, you're going to ruffle the feathers of. And so it manifests itself in this case, in a vote where 2 Democrats joined up with 7 Republicans. It wasn't pro-Astorino, it wasn't anti-Jenkins.
No, this is a budget vote.
It was a budget vote. It happened to also be right for my district. All 3 of the towns I represent, Newcastle, Somers, and Yorktown, got a tax cut in tough economic time because of it. We still have a lot of investment in the social net that's necessary for people that safety net that might fall off, and it allowed the parks to stay open. It kept public safety whole. It was a good budget.
I mean, in Brett's story on you,
yep,
he talks to the Democrat head of Somers, and she was 100% behind you, even though Down County wasn't too thrilled about it, because you have, and this is why we've been friends and why I've always championed you.
Thank you.
Because you've always represented your district. Your district is paying the tab for the Down County people that suck off the tab.
Except,
and you've been representing that.
Thank you. But I also... if the converse of that is that I have not done right by the rest of the county, I would disagree, and that wasn't your point. I think it was a good budget.
Your job is to represent your constituency that elected you.
Yes.
And they're footing the bill.
Yes, and it was also a good budget for the rest of the county too.
Yeah,
because what some of my colleagues were trying to do in good faith, but they were trying to spend millions and millions of dollars that, frankly, we did not have. No different than my business in being in a family, as a certified financial planner, working with a family. Yes, everybody likes to go to Disneyland, to vacation, go to movies, go out to dinner. But if you can't afford it, you have to pull yourself back to a point that you can live within your means. And government needs to do it because it's not directly our money, and we have a higher calling, if you will.
Well, and
In
unlike
this
the
case,
federal government, you can't print money.
we have
That's
to
the
balance our
difference.
budget. It has to be on time. It has to be based on prudent financial components. And because we also have a AAA bond rating that I take very strongly. And in the 16 years I've been there, we've been able to retain that AAA bond
Now, as a
rating.
Yorktown resident, I have a feel of the pulse of Yorktown. Now, you cover Somers. You're involved in Somers a bit. How do you feel? What is your reaction with county government in Somers and their representation? How have you found it when you've dealt with people in Somers?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think Mike definitely represents the character of the three towns he covers. So I'm not surprised with the vote he had.
So what are the three towns, Mike?
It's Newcastle, Yorktown, and Somers.
Okay,
Three
sorry,
towns.
Brett,
Yeah.
but
And also, and actually, B, I actually think if you stay at the table and you negotiate, you're going to get more of your position and be more effective negotiating with the other party.
Literally, I had colleagues that, people said, how did the vote go? The vote was 9-0, but we have 17 legislators. There were 8 legislators that weren't even physically, to Brett's point, at the table, at their desk
now that
when the
is an
vote took
interesting
place.
story. How did that happen? Because I mean, this is good. This is the kind of stuff that's fun.
Channel 12
that makes politics fun.
Channel 12 happened to be there when the lights were turned out, and they have shown that shot continually, and we think it'll be stock photo forever.
Well, what do you mean
from
the
them.
lights were turned out?
What happened?
Don't
the
assume
story.
everybody here knows what we're. Yeah.
I titillated you, right?
Yes, you did.
And Phil Reisman happened to also be in the room, and one can go back and read it.
I did.
What happened was that we had, as each budget, it takes on a life of its own. This one happened to be its own brand of contentiousness. And when we got to a critical moment, Virginia President, myself, as two Democrats, said in a public forum that we thought that the budget process procedurally and substantively was going in the wrong direction, and that we felt it was important to work with colleagues that would join us, and it happened to be 7 Republicans, in putting a budget that wasn't as draconian as the county executive and wasn't as Christmas wish as the Democrats. That we felt that we needed to put something that was sustainable, that he would be able to, he being the county executive, sign, that would give what we could in terms of social investments and park investments and all the rest, but that again wouldn't break our AAA bond rating. And when we then put that forward, some of our colleagues, there were 8 of them specifically, were seemingly put off by that. And when we went into then the budget vote that they had called and sat there, they tried to procedurally truncate the meeting and made a motion. They made a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Okay.
It was seconded, and then they got up and left. But we never voted on it, and they would have lost the vote. That would have been like 2 members of Congress basically standing up, one saying, I move to adjourn Congress. You would then say, I second, and the 2 of you would walk out, and therefore the congressional session would be adjourned. That's not the case, because 433 members would still be sitting in their chairs. 2 can't do that unless it's a vote. And they walked out. They literally got up and left.
Before the vote to adjourn.
Well, the meeting had just started. So now and certainly before the vote to adjourn itself, so we were stunned.
So there was no vote to adjourn the meeting.
Correct.
Which is why the budget vote was legal.
The vote was called legally. We had a quorum. Under our rules and any rules, a quorum continues until there's a vote to adjourn a meeting, right? I mean, or if there's less than a quorum,
What
then
makes
under
a
procedure,
quorum in county legislature?
majority,
What's a quorum?
9 out of 17.
Okay.
So
I'm trying to
we had
educate at the same
sure,
time.
we had 9. The meeting was duly called. We had 9 out of 7. We had 17 out of 17. The meeting began, and 8. The minority just walked out, and you can't have that because a minority can't thwart. It'd be like a family. You have 5 people, and one kid gets up and leaves and says the meeting's over. It's a family meeting. So the 9 of us continued, and we were hoping at any moment they would come back. At the same time, when they walked out, at one moment the lights went out. The whole room went dark. Then the microphones died. We had no electricity. We had no microphones. The camera was shut off, so there were no official proceedings. The clerk walked out. The deputy clerk walked out. They then started ringing the bells, which were bells to summon us. So we sat for the next hour in the dark. We were able to get the bells on. We couldn't get the bells off. We were able to find the light switch. We couldn't get the microphones working, and another camera person stepped in. So we have an official record, and we passed minutes, and we filed them, and the 9 of us continued. And to Brett's point, there weren't even 17 legislators at the table to vote on this budget. I'm not here to charge nor to answer for, but I can just say that I stayed there and debated and then voted for this budget.
The other Democrat, what town does she represent?
The other
Perez.
Virginia Perez.
Yeah.
She's Yonkers.
Okay.
Southwest Yonkers.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay.
So it's even geographically,
Yeah.
Yorktown to Yonkers.
Yeah.
And what she and I have done, we live. You're not going to remember this, but you will. There was a world of the Cold War, and the Cold War had the West and the East, had the good and the bad, the United States and the Soviet Union. But there was a non-aligned part of that world. It was led by Sweden and other countries.
Switzerland areas.
Right?
Like
Switzerland's
that, yeah.
always been neutral in terms of their geography. But Sweden was the non-aligned world. And what Sweden had done was to say, look, there's merit on both sides, and we're not going to decide. What Virginia and I did, not to be macro again, top down, but was to basically say that we're not going to get into this world of because you're a Democrat, you're good, and because you're a Republican, you're bad, or vice versa. We're instead going to work with, at our level, our legislative colleagues that will work with us to come up with a reasonable budget, and that's what we did.
You were able to convince the Republicans to break away from Astorino's budget.
Well, Jim Maizano deserves a lot of credit on that. Jim is the minority leader from New Rochelle.
Right.
He and I have been on the board. We are now the last two, except for Bernice Sprague, the most tenured members, and will hopefully continue. Bill Ryan is as well, but he's leaving. So the two of us, and we have worked together and recognized that we as a coalition can accomplish quite a bit. I have a novel theory that to accomplish things, you're better off, instead of fighting it out, compromising it out.
But let me ask you a question. Was it difficult to get the Republicans to budge?
Well, we put forward such a reasonable program, to Rob Astorino's credit, and he can only defend and talk about his vote. He went along with our additions to the budget, and he moved. We offered the same movement.
In other words, you're saying Astorino was an intransient on this.
Correct. He had to compromise, and he did. Basically, it came down to, I want to add no money. The Democrat 8 said we want to add $28 million, and the 9 of us came up with an $8 million additional package. By putting $8 million in, it was not as good as 28 if you wanted more spending, but more spending than what Rob wanted.
Well, what are future budget votes going to look like? Because I mean, and when Rob Astorino came to the town of Somers and gave the outlook, it was pretty frightening that basically our contributions to pensions are going to keep on increasing. So
stay tuned. It's been our budget is a four-legged stool. It's sales tax, property tax, it's investments and other taxes, and then it's federal and state aid. Well, there's no other money at the federal and the state level. Investments and other taxes are not going anywhere. Property tax is the default, and Rob doesn't want to raise that. And nobody likes taxes. And then there's sales tax. Sales tax is a third of our budget. Well, look at the economy. It's creaking to life, but it's not going at 5 and 7 and 10% per year. So if we don't get this, we're then left with property tax. And in a world where we're trying to suppress that as much as possible, and yet the forces from outside are saying you have to continue to spend for pension and health care, it's very, very problematic.
Well, now this is where the state affects you.
We are the children. We are the child of the state.
Right, but
62 counties.
But you have a state budget. You have a state government.
Absolutely.
That has set in policies to keep our unemployment almost to 2 percentage points above the national average. Nothing in the new budget's going to change that. They continue to maintain an energy utility tax. That hurts everybody, not businesses and anybody that pays an electric bill.
Okay.
They continued this tax that was supposed to expire on high-end earners, so they take more money from them, and that means they have less money to invest and create jobs, which would generate sales tax revenue by creating businesses, because Westchester gets a piece of the action of the sales tax, and unlike Putnam, they share that money with the local towns and cities.
Yes, the 62 counties are under state law in our charter. We are basically creations of the state. Consequently, we are harmed when the state doesn't come up with additional revenue for us, and when they burden us with what are called unfunded mandates.
They have for all, and I think this is why Cuomo's numbers are shooting down to earth now. Nobody, from Cuomo to the state Senate, to to the Assembly has still attacked the unfunded mandates
Correct.
that burden the county and local government.
Let me put a number to that.
And that
Yeah.
affects your business and your sales tax
Of the
revenue because
500
people don't have money.
Of the $548 million we get in property tax, that's part of the stool, $220 million every Tuesday is wired up back to Albany for Medicaid. That is our biggest unfunded mandate. Pension costs, because of the stock market, because of the comptroller's view as a sole trustee of the system, because of the costs of people living longer, which as a society, that's the biggest issue that really is no one ever talks about. But I know from a financial planning standpoint, actuarially, it's that we're living longer, therefore read health care and pensions. From a pension perspective, no matter how many people we lay off or have attrition and then don't rehire, we still can't afford this huge increase in pension costs.
Paying people not to work.
Well, isn't it also, I mean, I feel like one of the big issues is that on the public sector versus the private sector, the compensation is very, very different at this point. I mean, I feel like
in terms of what? It's actually crossed. For a long time, you gave up money to work for government. And you gave up money. The feeling was, however, that there was public service involved. And more than that, down the road, you would get a better pension. And that during, you might have good health insurance, maybe better health insurance, but maybe not. In old days, private had better. When I first started, private had better. They had the Cadillac programs. Things have switched. What's now happened is that where private industries cut back on their pensions, they've gone from the defined benefit, these lifetime pensions, to 401ks and defined contribution plans. And certainly their health insurance has been cut back quite a bit, and their salaries have been pared back. Government stayed where it was, and with inflation has gone ahead. So you actually, in some ways, make more money working for government, and your benefit package is greater, and that's created this, I would almost say, pension envy or benefits envy that people now look to government and say, and you guys are were recession-proof, immune, and that's not right because you work for us.
Well,
and there's some of that.
Out in California, just to throw in something, a city in California is the first one in the country to file for bankruptcy.
No, the biggest, Stockton.
Right,
not
Stockton.
the first.
Right,
but
biggest, I'm sorry. Biggest.
One of the big ones.
Now,
yeah.
a problem with their bankruptcy filing, they're asking or demanding that the investors of their bonds get less than they put it, I mean, not even get their money back, getting less, but they're asking nothing from the public sector unions in this bankruptcy. But that's what drove the city. It was the unfunded mandates and the unsustainable pensions. Do you see that swinging across the country? Do you see that swinging?
I don't. I don't, fortunately, because if you cross that inviolate wall, first of all, at Stockton, I would never, ever want to buy a Stockton bond again, because it's not backed with any promise, and you've cut your own throat. It's a family that is so desperate in the short term that basically takes their mortgage and says, I'm not making that payment. Well, you're not going to get another loan.
What I'm asking is that if the court upholds this, where the public sector unions don't have to contribute anything, and the private investor, the people that bought the bonds can't even get there, because in bankruptcy, they're supposed to be first on the list, right?
Their debt is secured, of course.
Right, but the Stockton is saying, screw that.
Well, first of all, just because they're making that point doesn't mean they're going to get approval.
I said, but if this gets approved, do you feel that people will be less likely to invest in because of the fear that it could happen?
I still don't. If you look back to Orange County in California, which years ago had defaulted, what's interesting about it is it's taught in all the business schools. But what isn't taught is that within basically 2 years, all the bondholders were made whole. The payments picked back up again. So just because, and I'm not familiar with the Stockton situation, just because Stockton might even get a judge to give them some short-term relief on their municipal bonds, their indentures, it doesn't mean that ultimately the bondholders are not made whole anyway. But if you ask, that's why it's so important to keep a AAA bond rating, Andy. That's why it's so important, back to the budget, what we did, because it kept our excellent financial position in a tough market and said that this ship of state is not going to sink. And I, as long as I'm a county legislator representing 1 inch of Westchester County, am not going to vote for a bad budget that hurts my constituents, hurts the county, puts us in a bad political situation, a bad financial situation, even if along the way I gain some support in the short term because I gave monies to X group. Not going to do it. And that's...
It seems that every year, though, that especially on a local level, you look at school budgets and town budgets. Every year, the budget goes up a little bit. The services go down a little bit because people have to get fired. Especially on a school districts. I mean, every year teachers are
lightly,
yeah. And I'm wondering when is it going to stop? When is that trend going to stop?
When the pension levels off, which the advisories we're getting seem to still indicate 3 to 5 years, though the stock market rise certainly helps, albeit short term, all-time highs and the like. When actuarially that the math works out so that the present value of the future obligation is sufficient, then that upward pressure on pensions will stop. If the 2% cap then still allows them to pay their other bills, and if Albany, like they did the other day, where they did come up with about $930 million of school aid around the state, can come up with money at the state level to help out, then hopefully the layoffs will stop and maybe investing can start once again.
But my question, one thing, but wouldn't, if Albany started removing some of these mandates, make that property tax cap have more meaning?
Well, another question is, why is there even school aid? I don't understand the purpose of that. Why are we sending money to the state to then send back to our own school districts?
Because like the mafia, they got to get their vig. Don't forget, they're not giving you back what you sent them.
But the portfolio. But remember, they get taxes from more than just property tax, from more than just income tax, right? They have corporate tax, estate tax. They have franchise taxes. They have the whole series of tax. So the theory is that legislators, I'm not up there, but they've been successful in dragging money. Ironically, it's our money we send up there that they send back.
We're running out of time. I was given a signal. Number one, you're unique this year. This is the first time you're going to run without an opponent in all the times you run. Am I correct?
It's April 3rd. I don't know if that's the case. I've been to 11 elections. They've been 10.
Yorktown's not putting up anybody against you. Somer's not putting up anybody against you.
I'm a boxer. Guess what boxers do? They punch, okay? And I constantly am out there. I'm constantly challenged. I go to town board meetings. If there's no election in November, it'll make it easier for November. But
you didn't answer the question. Is this your first race? I said,
yes.
Is this your first race without an opponent?
Correct. It would be, yes.
So
I'll tell you, it's bad for us because October usually is our most lucrative month.
Well, I can though be of two opinions if you want.
Okay.
But anyway, how do you feel after all this? Do you feel because
I feel like I'm in the middle of a maelstrom is the way I feel, because coming off to the budget vote where I was either knighted or damned, to be in the middle of this, frankly, has been a little surprising.
Not the first time you've been damned. I remember when they cut your office in half. I don't know if you were living in Westchester at the time.
But not his fault.
They cut his office in half when he went against the prevailing wisdom of his party.
I've gone up against state senators.
He's been a maverick quite a few times.
I can write my book. So it feels exactly as it is. I put myself out there, and if nobody runs against me mechanically, it'll make it easier. But it's the same challenges.
But the question, when I say that, do you feel like that you've actually been able to find that middle ground where that you brought people together when they're not putting up somebody that can beat you?
Look, if I want to take that as a plebiscite to that, sure, a referendum on that. But the answer is, I do feel like I've hit the middle ground. Because the response I've gotten from the real people are, way to go, and it was common sense.
Okay, well, listen, we're out of time here. Brett, thank you, and we'll see you on the next show.
Thank you.
Mike, you'll be here for the next show.
You got it.
And we're going to be, that next show, we're going to be dealing with state issues, and federal, we're going to take Mike out of his comfort zone, and we're going to deal with more broad range issues. So anyway, these were my opinions. This is what I say. What say you? Geez, I've just flashed back to another publication. And I am so glad. Remember to always get your local paper that you don't have to pay for because it's mailed to everybody, correct? Now, you've been sending out this again with the attachment, what are the...
Everyone in town who wants the paper can get the paper.
And if they fill out the card, that helps you out.
It lowers our postage. Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, fill out the card, pay attention, and Mike, keep doing a good job. I'm proud to call you my friend.